All right, let's talk about a scenario where we want to switch heads and not just faces. And it requires a little bit different techniques. There's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to show you one way. So I've got this image, and I've also got two images to choose from: Steve Buscemi, Nicolas Cage. And one thing that we need to pay attention to all the time, I didn't mention it in the last video, but we need to pay attention to lighting. And if we look at this image, we can see that the brighter side of her face is the left-hand side. Shadow is the right-hand side. If we look at Nicolas Cage, we can see brighter to the left, darker to the right. The opposite is true here. And so if we were going to use this image, we would want to consider perhaps going to our transform options. And under our transform options, there we go, image rotation, we can flip this horizontally. Looks a little bit less like Steve Buscemi now, but the lighting is going to be a better match. Now, both of these, the lighting's not perfect. It's not a very soft. We've got kind of harder shadows than we do in this one, but we're going to move ahead with this anyways. So if we're going to attach, for the sake of this, I'll do Nicolas Cage again. So if I'm going to put Nicolas Cage's head on Marilyn Monroe's body, I need to probably start by selecting Nicolas Cage. I'm going to do that the easy way with just select subject, see if Photoshop gives me a decent starting point. So I'm going to grab any one of my selection tools to get selected mask to show up at the top. I'm going to go into select and mask. And because this ballerina image was on a black background, I'm going to make sure that my view here is set for on black. And I'll turn the opacity all the way up so I can really see it on black. Before I do really anything else, I need to take a close look at the hair and see what's going on there. Most of it looks like color cast, so before I even tweak anything else, I might just click decontaminate colors and see what I get. Okay. Now, if I peek at my overlay really quick to see if I'm missing anything, there may be a little bit of hair here that's worth trying the refine edge on to see if it gets a little bit more detail. So go through those areas there just slightly, and then we'll come back and preview this again on black, make sure that I didn't cause any problems there. Okay, so I think I'm okay with that. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I don't actually need his shoulders either. And so I'm going to remove everything. So I'm going to add to this mask his lower body. I'm going to use a tool that we haven't discussed. It's called the Pen tool. It's a selection tool that allows you to draw really precisely. And I'm using this tool just for the sake of showing it to you. But it's based on geometric curves and lets me stay basically just on the skin side of things here, and lets me make a really precise selection relatively quickly once you know how to use the tool. And once I've made it around the neck, I'm just going to make a wide selection to connect me back to the starting point. Now this comes up as a points, which is in the paths tool, which we haven't looked at. To get this into an actual selection from the paths box, I can either command click the thumbnail here, or I can go down to the thumbs here and choose make selection from path, which is this little icon at the bottom. Then I can come back to this layer mask, and I'm just going to fill this selection with black to delete the body. I'm going to do that with Option or Alt Delete. So now I have Nicolas Cage's floating head. His hair selection doesn't look great, but because we're going on black here, I think we're going to get away with it. So I'm going to take this with my move tool, drag it to the ballerina layer, and we can tell it's much larger. So when we bring it in like this, we've ended up with this kind of Shakespearean collar. That's not the kind of head replacement we're going to try to do, but for now we're going to leave that. Right now I'm just going to make the decision that I'm okay with this being a destructive edit. For safety's sake, I might make a copy, turn the copy off, and then I'm going to right click on this layer mask and say to apply it. So I don't care about his shirt and jacket. I just want his head and neck. So I'm going to bring out my transform tools. I'm going to shrink this down so we're getting in the ballpark, zoom into this area, and just like we did on the last one, I'm going to put some transparency on this. I'm going to line up maybe eyeballs to start with. Drop my anchor point tool in there. If your anchor point tool is not visible, remember that you can just turn it on in the upper palette. And holding Option, I'm going to shrink the eyeballs to roughly match. Go ahead and continue to zoom in. And you'll notice that when the eyeballs match, the face size is still much larger. And so in this case, I'm going to use probably like mouth to eye height maybe to size this. So I'm going to move that marker to the mouth, and I'm going to take a look at head size if I match kind of facial features roughly. So I'll kind of match mouth and nose, let eyes be a little bit different, and then take a look at kind of neck size, how that fits. I think we might get away with that. Chin's in roughly the same place. So I'm pretty okay with that. So I'm gonna hit enter to confirm that, turn my transparency back up. And the main problem that we need to address at this point is the fact that we're not trying to keep Marilyn's hair. If we were trying to keep her hair, I would have just done a face swap, not the head swap. So I'm going to make a duplicate of the Marilyn layer. Remember, I'm doing that with Command or Control J, and I can do this a lot of different ways, but probably what I'm going to do is with my retouching tools, and not just black, because this background isn't actually just black. Like if I lighten this background so you can see there's actually some detail in there. So just a black brush probably doesn't give us the detail we'd expect. But what I'll probably do is kind of fix the hair up over the shoulders, and use a combination of my stamp tools and healing brush tools to do that. And just heal that up a little bit. It looks like I just need to, there we go. So it's off the shoulder there, going to the neck. I'll do the same thing over here. And I'll probably need to make a selection and then rotate my selection. Let's see how close we're getting there. Something like that might work if I'm more careful about the starting point. And because I'm healing first, I don't know that healing first was the best idea. It's trying to take too many cues from hair color. So I might switch to my stamp tool to set this line first. It's usually this kind of back and forth where you have to make some decisions about which direction that's going to go. I'll pull that up just a little ways and then switch back to my healing brush and hit this border just a little bit to smooth that out. All right. I don't think I'll bore you with the detail work, but obviously you can clean up that neckline a little bit better. Okay, so I've kind of separated the hairline there. I might go ahead and cut most of the head off here, and I can do that, you know, relatively quickly. Maybe I'll just leave a little bit of the chin in case we need it. So I'll come up, I'll leave the neck basically intact. And having trouble with my stuff scrolling a little bit. So I've made a selection, I'm gonna hold shift and add to that selection till I am all the way around the head. I might hold option and cut this in just a little bit tighter in a couple places where I went big. So option lets you draw kind of removals from your big clunky selection. And with this selection drawn, I'm going to see if I can if I can use the patch tool. It's going to definitely do something funky here, but I'm going to at least look and see what it does. So patch tool's hiding in here. I'm going to drag to background area here, release. It's giving me this kind of gigantic blowout, which I don't really want. And can try content aware and see if that gives me a different result. Yeah, and I'm a little bit better with that, even though it did something funny over here on the neck. That's easy enough for me to come back in and retouch. So I'm going to go with that. I will use my all right, so I'm going to touch this up probably just with a stamp tool off the background here. I don't even think I need to be that careful in this case. So leave a little bit of chin there. We'll come back and, whoops, I turned the wrong layer on, and see if that removed enough hair for us to kind of fit this in position. Now we can kind of ignore the rest of the face. I can use the arrow keys to nudge a little bit at a time too, and I can decide, you know, at what height this starts fitting. I think about right there seems good. Now if it helps, I can deal with the color issue. We've got stuff kind of approximately in place. We can look at scale and tell that that's pretty much working. One of the challenges is coloration. And so I can jump in and add a, let's try color balance first. We may also need to add some kind of levels adjustment or something like that as well, because we have a fairly bright photo, which is kind of comparing with this fairly dark photo of Nicolas Cage. So let's start by pinning this color balance adjustment. And before we even touch that, let's take a look at maybe just adjusting levels, and we haven't talked too much about levels. But this levels adjustment, basically we've got shadows, midtones, highlights, and we can increase shadows by coming this way. Okay, so I was saying that this is shadows, increasing shadows. That's obviously not what we want to do. This is midtones. It tends to kind of give you an overall brighter or darker take on things. The default position is 1.00. And then this is your highlights, which tends to increase just your whites. And then this is kind of the range of reproducible tones. And so if you have black values that really should be in gray, so other than the background, if we look at like shadow tones, anywhere through here, they're not fully black. And so sliding this towards gray takes some of that low end contrast out. Opposite happens if we pull the slider that's by whites. We can remove, make the brightest tones appear more gray. And so this is a pretty simple method to kind of brighten things slightly, deal with the darkest shadows, and you can see that like right away with a little bit of adjustment to the midtone slider and the shadow point, we're definitely getting in the same range. So we'll probably combine that with our color balance adjustment, which lets us come in. We can tell this is way too yellow. So we can start on midtones in yellow, pull it towards blue. Sometimes if you can't quite tell which slider to adjust, you just wiggle them and kind of stop in the middle, like, because it'll look worse towards green, worse towards magenta. So you kind of find the place in the slider where you feel like you're in between where it's getting worse. And this wiggle technique actually works out pretty well. It seems like there's this tweak, a little tweak towards blue might make some sense. And then we'll also visit shadows, do kind of the same thing there. Feels like shadows are actually a little bit towards blue there, but might be a little bit towards red the other way. And do the kind of green, orange sweep until we feel we're getting somewhere with it. And then I'm going to visit highlights last. And you don't always get this right just one trip through. Sometimes I'm going to, possibly have to revisit midtones again. And then it's a little bit of a back and forth battle as we play with these. Seems interesting enough. There's like a little bit of a yellow cast to the highlights there. All right. So I'm going to say maybe that's getting good enough. I'm going to come back to levels and see what happens if I let the blacks be just a touch darker. Okay. So I don't think that's a perfect match yet. I could definitely spend some more time with that. Kind of specifically, it feels like I lost too much red somewhere. So I could play with that forever, but you got to get it kind of in the ballpark. We're going to leave it there for now. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to add a mask to the head layer, which I should probably go ahead and rename to, I'll call it new head. All right, so we'll start by just seeing if we can pull off kind of a blend just by taking our mask with a soft brush and see what happens if we paint black on our mask layer. So painting black, so we're basically blending Marilyn's neck with Nicolas Cage's neck. And at some point we might see that that actually begins to work. In this case, I'm not super disappointed with that. I think there's some kind of coloration stuff to do. If I look at this closely, another thing to consider is the grain changes between this and the face. So sometimes, it could be worth, making a duplicate, turning one off, and trying we can add some noise through the filter noise, add noise thing. Typically that noise will be a little bit on the aggressive side, but it's maybe a good starting point to see. It looks like something like 1.5% or something is giving me something that at least feels similar. And then, once we're here, it's potentially back to this color balance tool, see if we can deal with this kind of yellow cast. Oh yeah, big change just by pushing that a little bit more towards blue. And we've got a pretty good head swap started that just needs some detail work. Remember, we always have the ability to come in and create a new retouch layer. That retouch layer might live at the top, and tools, if we click sample all layers, we can come in and anything we're not happy with, if there's something kind of in the neck here that doesn't feel right, we can use the tools that we're used to from kind of restoring tasks to create some more blends. I can bring some tones up from the neck, kind of maybe smooth out some of those details where it feels like his neck creases are are making a weird blend, or I can kind of decrease the shadow edge a little bit by making it blend more. Obviously there's always some back and forth here, and remember the trick that I use sometimes with the stamp tool, where if the other tools aren't cooperating, you can sample something nearby, you can change the tool's overall opacity. I need to make this say all layers, but I can turn this down and decrease the shadow a little bit by putting in kind of a percentage of that kind of nearby layer if we're trying to cut into something. So anyways, that's one basic way of doing a head swap. Try it out and see how good of a swap that you can do. And yeah,